Sean, over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Claire. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you for reading that poem. I really like, admire Fiona Zerp's work as well. Also, just like to thank the Red Wheelbarrow for having me, Jacques and Ed for his coordination, obviously Claire for hosting me and for hosting us. And then for all of you who've logged on, who've logged in, who are present today, I'm really it's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you. I thought if you guys don't mind, if you can humor me, I want to ask if you can write into the chat the name, say surname or the name of the most recent poet who you read, maybe this morning or perhaps yesterday or a couple of days ago or last month. The name or say surname of the last or most recent poet you read. I'm going to put one. I'm going to start by putting one in there. Seamus Heaney. 17th was St. Patrick's Day. It felt like a good excuse to read some Seamus Heaney. And I'll give you guys say like a minute, if that's okay. Can you all hear me fine? Is it nice and clear? Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Some interesting poets. Yeah, thank you for sharing these. Okay, cool. We've got a couple coming in. Okay, awesome. I think a lot of these I'm actually unfamiliar with, right? I think it's for me it's really cool. I always like coming across new poets, new writers. You know, sometimes there's a situation that happens where maybe someone's talking about, say, like a Hungarian poet or something, and who one's never heard of, and you want to kind of sound good and say, "Oh yeah, I kind of know I know a bit of their work. I've read a couple." And meanwhile, you're furiously Googling like who they are. But in my case, I really like coming across poets, writers who I haven't come across, and there's some definitely some here for me to make a note of. I guess all of them they represent like a time and place, particular time and place. Derek Walker, thanks Frank for adding that. I really like a lot of Derek Walcott's work as well. Yeah, they represent a time and a place. Some people might say, well, poets and poems generally, they almost always do represent a time and a place. I think in my case today, the poems I want to share with you from my debut book, they explicitly look at time and place, right? To the point of often like the title is like a time and place, right? So it's very, very explicit. And I thought that maybe that could be a nice way to sort of segue in, right? If you'll humor me. So this is the book. Claire showed it already. I'm not sure if my blur is also allowing it to be shown clearly. Returning Signs, my debut collection of poems published by Botsotso, as Claire mentioned in December 2025. And again, a big thanks to Alan Kolsky-Horitz and the team at Botsotso for supporting my work and believing in my work and publishing the book. I was very excited to have that published. And the first poem I'm going to read, let me just close that there, is the first poem in the book, right? It's the very first one. Let me just find here the very first one in the book itself, which seems very apt, right, to begin right at the beginning. And you'll see this idea of sort of time and place. The title is Durban, Microlight. Okay. A microlight in the Durban twilight, moving mosquito-like across the clouds. A tired atom under dusk slunk through the overcast gloom, dragging along its overwhelming engine, snoring microwave to air raid siren. To you at 5 years old, in bright Superman pajamas, briefly impenetrable by history, the microlight is a tiny signal above Minitown, where colors fade perfectly into the background. Everything feels like musty lipstick, face brick red. Back in the warm rooms of the beach hotel, window cushions green as the shell of a long dead sea urchin, Mickey's come out from damp corners to float. Your identity, too, will hover in the coming years, toing and froing, without any feet on the ground. Now you still hear the throttle from above, the whining flare, drowning out the evening, pushing thoughts out your head from the day's earlier visit to SeaWorld to see a shark cut open like a kiwi fruit before the crowd. Something is happening here. barely perceptible to a child. A ringing will follow you, grow louder, an itch, burning, droning in crescendo. You're bitten as you glimpse the past's outline, the drifting centuries into which you were born. Okay, so that's the very first one, at least in the book. The next one I'm going to look at, I'll read for you guys, is again, it's near the beginning, it's like the third one. And the title you see, and the title, Cape Town in All Seasons. Right? Cape Town in All Seasons. So much seems so constant in this place where clouds gather, where the winter drops of grey storm in a chimneyed sky, as softly English as the mountain shade casting a pavement across town. Or during late spring, when the wind has cleaned everything in the city out of sight under white skies, and a child's calls are sucked into blinding clouds. Or limp afternoon light spreading like a weed in summer over the concrete verge, and the feinboss shrubs and plant life lied faint and drained of their color by centuries of playing witness. Or wet earth in the autumn, which deepens the early morning shadow and browns the paths around which mush and dirt seep like something heatless, slow and numb. In all seasons, at every second, as the moon returns and returns, the string bow and its sound keeps breaking. It leaves a silence now where a song would ring, an almond fence is built between every person. What else can be said? What else is more constant than the sinking weight of this place's past in the immensity of the sea at its side? Okay, the next one I'm going to read for you is, I guess, has a similar feel. I can just find it here. Yeah, similar kind of feel, maybe different execution, I guess. It's called The Cape Wind. Yeah, the Cape Wind follows you, puffs and nags at you, and begging you, flusters you, doesn't leave you still, fills you with shivers. The gusts rush you along, isolate you. It blows the past through you, pushing you further and further outside the outside. And this one, I wanted to talk that briefly about. When I first, I think I mentioned this to Claire. There's like an embarrassingly long Word document of like drafts, but something like sort of honestly, it's 70 pages long, right? Originally, this one was going to be some like long, winding narrative poem, that really wasn't going anywhere, despite like what felt like was a lot of work and time. I think about a year later, I tried to rework it into something that was around 20 to 30 lines, maybe similar to the previous one, Cape Town and the Seasons. And then, yeah, and it was going to be set in District 6, and there was all these like references coming in and out, and still there was something not quite right or missing. And perhaps another a year or two later, I tried to go back to the original, I guess, first seed of the idea or the image that I'd written to myself, a WhatsApp note to myself about this, the wind that blows the past through you, and try to really, I guess, cut it down into some, sort of symbolist, imagist kind of style. I was happy that it was published in a new coin, and obviously it's part of the book. But I wanted to, perhaps it speaks to this idea poets or people engaging in art and artistic practice may know better than most, that you can work, spend a lot of time on something, work and work and work and put time in it, and maybe it doesn't end up going anywhere, right? Regardless of, even if one wants to try publish it somewhere, maybe you know that and feel that it doesn't really work, and after all that time, all that effort, which obviously is never completely pointless, right? One's practicing one's craft and gets to work on that and refine that in the process. But it kind of got me thinking, and again, if you'll humor me, I wanted to put into the chat, what for you guys, right, is the most challenging thing about writing poetry. I'm going to paste something into the chat, and if you can then paste a short answer. So let me just paste this here. Yeah, thanks, Frank. Exactly. Editing is actually I think it's one of the options here. Um, uh, yeah, editing again, exactly. So I tried to, and obviously there could be like endless like many other options. I tried to make it, I guess, as concise as possible. So A would be building a coherent structure. B is finding the precise or original words. C, making sure it sounds good to your own ear. D, revision editing, which has come up already, right? E, the vulnerability, general vulnerability. F, general self-pressure, self-doubt about the quality, imposter syndrome. And then G, the solitary nature. Obviously, there could be far more many options or things that could be challenging, but just for the sake of this, if you can maybe pick one, I'll give you a minute to put that in. Okay, cool. B, yeah. Okay, cool. Vulnerabilities come up a couple of times. Yeah, the general self-pressure, finding the words. So vulnerability has come up a few times, and it's quite a it's cool. Let's see. Yeah, the revision editing, I guess perhaps revision editing or the vulnerability is what's come up most often. As I said, there could be far more options put here. I was thinking of things like form. Obviously, a lot of people write in free verse, obviously, which is a form of form itself, right? But I was thinking maybe loosely that could go on the A about the structure and mastering a kind of rhythm. I wanted to phrase that more like making sure it sounds good to your own ear, or that say a poet or writer develops their own ear. And then this idea of high emotional impact in only a few words. I was hoping that could sort of vaguely fall under finding the precise or the original words. Um, uh, uh, yeah, exactly. Thanks, Frank, for showing form is structure. Yeah, thanks, Frank. Um, okay, cool. Thanks, Francis. Yeah, tracing the labyrinthine twists of what one's own ear would be, how it sounds, how one's ear is formed by the sounds that resonate with others. Yeah, that's very cool. Thanks for sharing that. Writer's block, yeah, is a good one. Maybe I should have had that as an option, right? Writer's block, or yeah, it could maybe loosely fall under the self-pressure, but I agree that that should maybe be its own option. Um, Okay, cool. I'm going to continue then, if you guys don't mind. Thank you for humoring me with that. I'm going to continue reading some more. The next one, again, it follows this pattern, I guess, of like time and place being like explicitly in the title, right? This next one is called Plettenberg Bay. And, and yeah, it goes like this. White milkwoods stain us with their smell, like berry ink on an ocean of tar. In the nearby milk sand at dusk, our toes touch the dew beneath the silky top layer. We cross the parking lot, leave the last cars behind, the sea sound receding as we climb the hill, as though it's under its own water or ducked by the plastic clop of slip-slops. Teenage listlessness, looking for forbidden drinks, which doesn't notice the road whitened to a light gray under so much family sun, the hulking homes to be inhabited by a few times a year. We just go with the flow, after all, in these atrophied years. Hours of sea winds pass by before thought becomes action. We wander on, think about setting a bin on fire to watch the flames, up and down the town, in a place so South African, scenic, awkward, its history made temporary, then washed away. Okay, cool. Um, The next one I'm going to read, um, again, is, I guess, sort of set in sort of Cape Town, Western Cape, but it has a little bit of a different, I guess, feel than the first few that I've read so far. This one is called "Crush on Where You Grew Up," right? "Crush on Where You Grew Up," and there's like a italic sort of subheading that says after Jerome Bruner. Thelma, I think, is here, and I'd like to thank Thelma for introducing me to Jerome Bruner, to the psychologist. And for those who maybe haven't come across his work, very basically and very quickly, his idea was that not just we don't just experience and navigate reality through language, we do so through narrative, right? We sort of reflect, make sense on our memory and our whole experience, the way we navigate the world is through narrative, right? So I guess it's perhaps not too much of a jump to go from there to say that if we accept this theory, we're all writers, right? Whether we kind of like it or not, or accepted it or not. So, okay, cool. This is called Crushing Where You Grew Up, after Jerome Bruner. I guess it's in the telling, and we can tell it, hear it, read it, and write it together. The sky's as thick with clouds as a block nose building up above mountains, or like a suburban renovation of their peaks. Days disappear through dead grass. Somehow the vibracrete shade of a flower-bed soil stays the same through the seasons. You cruise the freeway stuck not in traffic but in constant afternoon, near the forbidden dunes, whose sand in the wind nips your ankles, threads through Strunfeld, then in a murmuration shaves the tar raw, crossing the road coarsely as a cat's tongue, drawing you to the sea, to a story as long or as short as needs be. You can walk along the beach there through infancy, adolescence, and into marriage, step over stubs of green bottle glass cooled pebble smooth by the South Atlantic, kelp cold and clear. You can see the waves made mud with sand, drag back and break into themselves, forming moving tire tracks at the shore. As a child, you called these the crush or the crushing, something to run away from, pulling you in, towards a change maybe you won't end up liking. When a foot's depth of sand is damp with shadow, it's time to return to Bath as the mountain light rushes into dusk, down the slopes which call you, to fold you gently into their arms, inviting you onto endless paths, stories about where you grew up. They defy middle, beginning, or end. Okay, cool. And the next one I'm going to read is called Garden. This one I was very happy and excited. It was shortlisted for South Africa New Contrast's National Poetry Prize in 2023, I think. There's a dedication in italics for Dorothy, my mom, based on her garden, right? The garden that she created. It's divided in three sections. I'll just use my fingers to show the different sections, right? Well, it's very short. The light hangs off the leaves like fruit, glowing ripe. You walk on grass unaware of its own dew, of the fertile shadow filling up the bushes. You forget the plate of porridge on the moist red stoop. You hear the cozy blue call of the red-eyed dove, see the graying shade under the bowing leaves, soft as a rusk soaked in rooibos. At some point, you have to leave this place with a mother's patience. Behind the flower bed, the silk orb weaver spins its web, threads of horizon's moon, quietly and quickly, suffusing summer into the windless night, leading you deeper down the childhood labyrinth, beside the immortal lemon tree, its drowsy little lanterns, its scent, lighter now, of withered protection. Okay, cool. The next one, I think we're still good for time, right? I think there's still a few more I'd like to, if it's okay as well, I'm gonna read a few more from here and maybe one or two like new ones that I'm still unsure about. Yeah, thanks, Frank, for your comment. The next one I'm going to read is a little bit different. When I was trying to think of which ones to read for you guys, I thought this one maybe is a bit easier if it's like if one reads it sort of by themselves, right? If it's not listened to, but maybe it has like a bit of a different vibe. I was very happy that it was published in Hotazel Review. Before that review sadly closed down. And this one, I guess, maybe takes place in like a Twin Peaksy sort of a world for those who are familiar with the show. It's called Inner Transactions. I had to learn quickly. The language when beseeching must always be clear. No space for misinterpretation. The inner voice assured. Sentences set in the tightest equation. Who knows where the message will finally arrive? For all things can and do animate. For years I felt forced to gamble a future consequence because of how I interact with a household object. So here is a plea to speak outward from the mind. The effects of the gamble, the directions time can take, good or bad, please don't let them apply to me or to her, as I hesitate before picking up the glass to return it to the kitchen, everything now quivering, this prolonging pause, a secret that's harder to keep up. I will think of someone else. I will send them out in my thoughts, the trail mapped clearly in straight lines. Okay, cool. There might be one that's it's a little easier when you can kind of read and digest it a bit, I guess. So the next one I'm going to read, also maybe a slightly different vibe. Here we go. Abasaurus twazi. Abasaurus twazi. Here, as far as I understand, this is a dinosaur found in South Africa. And as far as I understand, it's the first dinosaur that was given a local South African name, a name in quick on two legs, a claw on your first finger, you wandered, fast-running messenger of Kirkwood, through the Eastern Cape of millions of years ago, in a world without receiving your own name. Today, your name comes from words that allow you to invite in the past. It is an invocation to live in a language of wind at dusk, speech from dreams beyond the graves of giants. You have new meaning through these sounds, now that they link and stick to you. You invite me, too, to live in sound so familiar to me, yet still undeciphered, so that through this language I see you like an unknown neighbor pressed close to the border between you and me, the true form of perhaps all our relations. Cool. And this one, I guess, again, maybe something that's easier to sort of read and digest rather than hear it. There were lots of things. I guess, yeah, we can see that it winds. It's almost like a zigzagging river, right? It winds through like a lot of different ideas. I guess it's ambitious that it tries to pack like a lot of ideas into it, through the dinosaur, through its name, also like the language itself. And I guess perhaps what it was, one of the things it was aiming at was this experience, I guess, of a lot of South Africans, or certainly in my case, someone who's failed to learn Xhosa, certainly like sort of properly or competently, that it's like a language that's one's very familiar with, the sounds are familiar with, and one kind of heard them like a lot, but still sort of undecipherable, right? If one hasn't like properly learned the language. And I guess that's from there jumping to this idea of like a neighbor who's close, but also at the same time kind of far away with this distance. And from there, this idea, I guess, of the separateness, I guess, of South Africa. So I guess it does try to pack in a lot of like philosophical things. There are those who might say that a poem is not a good place for philosophy, right? And in many ways, one could agree with them, right? That the idea there is to focus on something very, very sharp, particular. I guess they want to avoid what sometimes they call posturing. Hopefully people will see this as, although yeah, it meanders and wanders through lots of different ideas, but hopefully they're dealt with appropriately, and at the end it sort of comes together, it's sewn together and lifts off, right? I guess there probably will be people who will respond to it like it's too muddled, or there's too much going on there. Okay, the next say about three I'll read. These are all, in terms of time and place, these are all I guess very much situated in South Africa. I'm going to read a few from South America, right? I'm connecting from Buenos Aires in Argentina, and I'll read a few set in South America. This the kind of last section of the book is in yeah, thanks Nicolas, who's connecting from Spain today. So the last section in the book is set in South America. This one is called Isla del Sol, Lago Titicaca. It's a lake on the border between Bolivia and Peru. And there's a dedication below for Simon and Rob. The hue of evening sky, a watercolor blue sunk into its page. First stars already out, spills of light from under the drip of blue. The men were returning in canoes, reed woven with the day's offering, sliding the balsas up through the reeds to the shore. Children were running up along the path, climbing the lush hill. Past us, the unknowing players in their game, in their laughter, saying, "Gringo, gringo, we have lodging for the night, only 20 pesos." running back towards their homes of stone, brushed into the green. That present was perfect, the children running in continuous completion. To open it again, to try to see the stars on the paper before me, is to strain it into blankness, the complete erasure a page feels over and over. Okay, cool. And the next one I'm going to read is called I Torino, which was a car that was almost like, I guess, a family car in Argentina in the 70s and 80s, I think, or 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? Like a popular sort of family car. It's set in San Antonio de Areco, which is a town about 3 or so hours north of Buenos Aires. And it goes like this. Drowsing under lush willows, you rest in rust, wheels tucked into the grass and silt, falling heavier into sleep, waiting for the river to rise, facing a path that won't be taken. You blend into the setting like your body was formed by mineral flowering from a meteorite crater, as natural as the fluvial mud, as old age. You repose in decay, sink into its comfort, a shell filling with memory, and so made unshell, made soul, even as the magenta deepens in your bonnet, around your sides and over your gracious boots, marooning you. Bright orange flakes fall off too, flecks of sunset. You can still feel the family once slumped in your back seat at their most together, or when you would set out with them into the Andes, roaring with altitude, climbing past the last rays of sun before open sky. The river rises around you now into the marshy grass, singing green and twitching with life, lapping at your doors, filling memory with sweet water. In front of you, the humid pampas throbbing until a sea-like horizon. A good-looking stranger passes by, and again, you see this invitation to stay a while longer, lying drenched under the willows, among gauchos loneliest sailors. Cool, and I'll read the next one. I'll read is actually the last. Thank you, Frank. Thanks for your lovely comment. Next one I'm going to read also is set in Buenos Aires. This is especially the area where we currently live. It's also the final poem of the collection, so I guess it's quite apt. I'm just going to plug in the charger quickly. Oops. There we go. So La Zona Oeste, Buenos Aires, that's the kind of the part of Buenos Aires where we live. There's a dedication here for los paragonenses. Paragoni is like a cultural center where there's various kind of cultural events. There's like a literary group, a writing group that I'm part of. We meet every Tuesday at this center. It used to be like a big kind of mansion, and they turned it into a public cultural center with a lovely garden. They have what they call Bosque de Poesía, like the woods of poetry, or poetry woods of poetry forest, and places where kids can play. Our 3-year-old daughter can enjoys like playing on the swings there. And so this is dedicated to yeah, thanks, Nicolas. This is dedicated to them, to this group. It's been really interesting, challenging trying to write in Spanish. And they've been very, I guess, like helpful to me. So this goes like this. At first sight, you think you know all there is to know here. Evening clouds rusting above a railroad, unseen smoke of diesel, of asado, rising, dusk smudging pink petals of the palo borracho on the roof of the rundown museum. You stitch your way across these streets, past graffiti competing for vacant walls like untattooed skin, even pichasao flaunting from your very own building, cars straining as they pull away, towing along a cumbia beat. You grow day by day into the sounds of this place, find joy in how they allow you to disguise yourself. A spy discovering he already has some roots in this river of movement, shouts, offers, exhaust fumes, reggaeton. Here the streets suspend the melancholy, here the streets suspend the melancholy that stalks every afternoon, despite the breeze under the fanning jacaranda leaves, the humid sun shedding heavy light on the horizon. A plain facade echoes with the city's language. Sounds like the colors of lentejuelas on the tongue, consonants crisp as the milhojas cake, vowels full of dulce de leche, plump as the green of plane trees in a plaza at evening after siesta. The sounds remind you you're chasing a nostalgia that was never yours, that you're becoming what you'd wanted to be, now have no other choice but to become, that the graffiti does not stain the buildings, it completes them, as they're caressed by hanging feathery leaves, a relief from the sweat this late, each one cupping the streetlight, filtering the darkness, pulling it down towards the pavement on the corner where women wait for the velvet bus which may never arrive. You wonder how you can be here, joining the queue among potholes, swallowing shadows, and be so happy. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's actually that's the final poem in the book, right? In the book Returning Signs. I thought, yeah, thank you, Kamal. Thank you for your comment as well. Thanks, Thelma. I thought, no, I think we're still good for time, right? It's been about half an hour. We're still good. I thought I could maybe read a few new ones that I'm very unsure about. Maybe if I can read, say, like two or so.
Please.
Yeah, cool. And then see what what you guys think. So this one is called Retroactive Anxiety. Very different title to the other ones. Okay. Sunday, the morning kept inside the bedroom by the breathless curtains. Even here, thoughts can stalk through bone, growing like fungus, finding mossy shade under a crumbling skull. You try to protect some moments, those first words of the day, her smile, dimples around her dummy, while you pull open the blankets. Those seconds passing into perfection, to lock away, never even to revisit, in case they're overrun by voices in your skull, echoing in your gut, decomposing your past. Okay, and cool, I'm gonna read, yeah, maybe one more, I guess. I had actually it's kind of two more new ones, but maybe they're both kind of similar. So I'll read this one. This one is it's called For Rowan Roman. The first blusters of autumn transform the clouds, the leaves' colors at the tip of turning. I went pacing down the pavement, past the unrushing bikes. I glimpsed the kiosk and swore I saw you, a joke in your eyes, your beard as thick as a shape-shifting story you're about to tell. I could hear the echoes of your students' names off the table in front of you as you defended them, cherished them, fingers clicking, singing, I wouldn't want to live in this world, saying I would not want to live in this world without you. I wouldn't want to live in this world, saying I would not want to live in this world without you. Your voice warm as smoke to sit round in the coming cold, the face brick wall already brownish red. A distant siren turned me away, my breath heaving like the buses in the streets. What's left of you can't be heard or seen or touched. I looked again and you were gone, had left me shaking in the sudden wind. Cool. So that's I guess that was like a in memoriam, right, for Rowan Roman, who was an artist, a cultural activist, a facilitator, and a teacher. He was a colleague and a friend. Sadly passed away far too young. I guess although I had some like uncertainties about the piece, something that's been on my mind like a lot, I guess, is poetry that like really engages, I guess, with the world. We can maybe say like applied poetry, right? And then we talk about applied maths or applied sciences, and obviously, uh, in the book in Returning Signs, there's a few, maybe there's kind of like a third of them of the poems are dealing, I guess, with sort of South Africa's history, with the past, right, and how it relates to the present, sort of white South African attitudes. There's maybe there's enough there for people who are interested to really go deeply into that, and for I guess readers who don't want to read that, there's maybe there's a lot of others like subjects. But when it comes to something like ecocide, right, that we're going through, and there's a great essay by Ben Ockery, right? There's like a call to arms for writers to write about the ecocide. It feels like something that I haven't been able to do, at least try to do like enough at all. Right? There's maybe two or three in the book that look at that very glancingly, but not really at all. And it's something I don't know how it is for you guys experience, but unfortunately for me, I can't sit down and say I want to write about the tree over there in front of the street. Right? It's kind of rely on sort of inspiration / something divine / subconscious / instinct. But it's something I'd like to, it feels like one really should be at least trying to. But maybe another way, if we look at this idea of applied poetry, is keeping, or at least trying to make a small contribution to keep alive the memory of someone special. And so that, I guess, was what I was trying to do with this one for Rowan. I'm going to paste in one last little thing into the chat, again, if you'll humor me. So as I mentioned, these last these last two poems are new. I think the first one that ended with that very kind of ominous decomposing your past, right? You can kind of imagine piano, very like great piano keys there at the end. I think that was part of a small batch that was rejected by a literary review recently. The one about Rowan, the last one, I haven't shared with anyone. So I'd love to get your guys, I guess, feedback. If you'll humor me, I'm going to paste this into the chat. So you'll see that. What's your feeling about those? These new, previously unshared poems with anyone? Hopeless. Need a bit more detail. Need to be more concise. Metaphors work well. Sound and rhythm is strong. Already strong across the board. There was like one that didn't copy well, perhaps a little too cheeky anyway. G was any the publisher rejects them is utterly lost. So if you guys wouldn't mind humoring me with that. Okay, cool. I like the thanks John, and Francis. I like the fact that some of you are picking up on some of the sound quality. Obviously, Claire started with a poem from Fiona Zerbst where sound. She works with sound so incredibly. Part of my attraction to her poetry, and I think for Claire to your work as well, right? Working with sound. I certainly try to work with sound and. Try to go over and over how it sounds, or sending sort of like voice note, WhatsApp voice note to oneself, hearing it sort of over and over. If it, if it sounds good, if it sounds, at least if there's no kind of like awkwardnesses, right? So thank you, Kamo, as well for that, and Hannah. Thank you very much as well. Okay, cool. I think I've pretty much come to an end in terms of the poems I was going to read today. I think that's good for time, right? It's about 40 minutes. I don't know if there are any questions that anyone may have.
I have a question.
Okay, cool.
Yes. So earlier you asked us what's the most difficult part of writing poetry, and we gave you our answer. I'm actually curious to know what's the most difficult part for you.
Okay, for me, cool. Thank you for thanks for asking me. I think if I were a participant and that had come up, I would have wanted to put like all of those, right? I would have wanted if there was an option to say like all of the above. Maybe that's like a cop out, but I would have, I don't know, like logged out and logged back in and put A, logged out, logged back in and put B, C, etc. Right? I think they're all of those are challenging for me from across sort of the writing in the first place, finding the words, right? This idea of like something of like high emotional impact and like a short space or amount of time. What is the right word, the precise word, what's original. The sound is important to me. I try, at least with the sound. Obviously, the editing process is, I gave an example of that one, the Cape Wind, that was just like a mess. There was like years of like going nowhere. And then, I think one of the options there as well was that self-pressure, the self-doubt that can easily slips into self-pressure or imposter syndrome. I think that's another like big thing. In terms of being something solitary, people might respond and say, well, that's kind of part of it, or like all of the artistic disciplines, at some point at least, there must be something, that needs like sort of solitude. And that's maybe what's so wonderful about a space like this, right? Where, the solitary becomes sort of communal, or becomes like a community. I think Flanger published something recently where they wrote about that, how it becomes something communal, or becomes like a community, right? That's what's so cool with, especially for sharing poetry and writing. But yeah, I'd say so maybe it's a cop-out, but like a mix of those.
It's probably like that for both of us, actually.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Can I ask another question? Just one more.
Yeah, sure.
Because you spoke about the editing and the sound part of the poetry. One of the things I hear repeatedly is that when you edit a poem, you're supposed to read it out loud and hear how it actually sounds. So I wanted to know, is that part of your process as well? Because sometimes I find it difficult. Like I see the poem on the page and it looks good and I'm happy with it. But the aspect of actually, performing the pose, reading it out loud is a different experience. So I wanted to know what your process is there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like giving it breath, right? And hearing it. No, definitely. I think so sound for me is very important. It's definitely something I try to do. I like what I think Basil Bunting said, that like all poets should be, even if maybe sound is not as important, they should always be reciting or writing it out loud, right? Or at least like as you said, afterwards you want to hear it out loud. So again, perhaps like embarrassingly, I will send like voice notes to myself of the reading the thing out loud, and I can try hear it, hear these like endless sort of voice notes of myself reading these things under my breath, and I can hear, no, it's like, in your head it sounds like it was going to be cool, and then like it sounds there's something kind of missing, or there's like an awkward thing that needs to be ironed out. So yeah, I do again sort of like embarrassingly over and over. There'll be these either out loud, even these WhatsApp voice notes to myself, so I can hear it.
Just thank you.
Cool.
Is that Jock? Go ahead, Jock.
Hi, Sean, can you hear me?
Yes.
That's good. I loved your reading.
Thank you.
I loved the way your poems are about precariousness, but they are not they're not desperate. They often strike me as remarkably upbeat in some way, in spite of being about precariousness. And I wonder if there are, for those of us who are feeling precarious, are there poets or even philosophers that would you agree with that assessment? And are there poets or philosophers that you turn to, who can combine those two things?
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks, Jacques, very much for that question. It's a very interesting, I guess, piece of insight. I'd never maybe consciously thought of that, or had it like defined or crystallized like that. But I think you're right. I do agree with what you said, your assertion. I guess that there is something precarious, but still upbeat, as you say, or still kind of maintaining or trying to maintain like a generally kind of positive or not pessimistic
Energized,
I guess, right? For these things, yeah, these things that are perhaps can be disconcerting or very like dark or problematic, but they try to not take like a pessimistic or as pessimistic a view as they could, I guess. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. But there is that sort of precariousness or fragility, right? Perhaps in everything in life in general that one perhaps most poets also like to try capture. I think I do try to capture that as you say. In terms of poets or philosophers that I turn to, I guess I mean one of the reasons why I started with that, with asking you guys to put poets into the chat was, I mean, there are quite a few there I hadn't read, and I'm excited to go back and read them when this is done. And I love like finding new ones. But I guess probably there are those that you keep returning to. A lot of South African poets. We've mentioned Fiona Zerbst, Peter Anderson, Stephen Watson. Feels like there's a lot of in contemporary South African poetry. There's a lot to really enjoy and admire. Sihle Ntuli, Kobus Moorman. There's I loved Frank Menke's book A Place to Night In that I've read recently. Alan Finley's new book Don't Fall Masthead I've just also really enjoyed it. Really, it's wonderful that there is a lot of really, obviously there's plenty more South African poets I probably should be naming that are not coming to my mind right now, but there's lots of really great stuff coming out now and then recently. Obviously, Jacques, your own book, your own work, right? And it's wonderful to be able to kind of turn to that. In terms of maybe the more general kind of international, like kind of when one starts, often it's a more general sort of international thing. I often return to Borges, the Argentinian, not just because I'm here, but his work never sort of ceases to amaze me. Pablo Neruda as well, right? There are more and more, I guess, Argentinian writers who I'm coming across who are really enjoying this. There's so much still to explore there. I'm trying to think other big ones like Rainer Maria Rilke is another like big one, the German language poets. Frank O'Hara, someone often Seamus Heaney. I put Seamus Heaney into the chat, right? There's another one I often return to as well. Derek Walcott that Frank mentioned. Gabriela Mistral, the Chilean poet, someone I like to return to. Alejandro Pizarnik is another Argentinian one who's kind of writes a lot of these mysterious prose poems. I used to sort of very pretentiously think prose poems was like a bit of a cop-out, but I've obviously come to see that they take a lot of work, right? There's a very particular thing happening that takes a lot of skill. And I like her mysterious prose poems. There's someone I came across kind of recently. Sorry, this is maybe becoming too long an answer. There's someone I came across kind of recently, a Uruguayan poet in terms of prose poems. And her name, I just want to double check that I've actually got her name down here correctly. I've made a list of like some Marosa Di Giorgio, right? The Uruguayan poet, also writing prose poems that when I read them, sometimes I feel like I don't like understand them immediately, but I feel very, very impacted by them emotionally. It has that sort of rare quality of something. People might say, well, surreal stuff does that really well, but something where maybe you don't consciously feel like you can work out what happened, but you feel like the impact, which seems like a very rare skill, and something that I feel almost every time I read her, who I really, really like. And I feel like I'm probably forgetting lots of very important, big influences on me, but that's I guess all that comes to mind now in the moment.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, and that's a very generous answer, not just about whom you read, but how you read. Thank you very much.
Yeah, cool.
Should we get Kiara before we take a short break?
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Kiara.
Thanks for being here. Hi, Sean. Thanks so much for inviting me. This was a very, very, very full reading, fulfilling and full. I love the poem about the Argentinian backdrop, basically, to put it simply. I'm traveling right now, and the one thing I see so much of is the rusted old cars. And I was like
Yeah.
questioning it so much. I asked my husband, I was like, why are there so many old cars parked like in the rural areas, basically, when you're traveling from one town to the next? But also in the towns, and you just painted it really beautifully. It's insane. Very
Cool.
good
Yeah,
job.
no, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
It's gorgeous.
Cool.
So yeah, my question is, what was the most rewarding thing about publishing your debut poetry book?
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks, Kara. That's a good question. Yeah, I guess maybe in a way people would say it's like the as like a project it kind of reaches its the maybe it's like its best outcome, right? Or the best conclusion that could it could possibly come to. Um, but it is like really, if I could say, and from my own experience, I mean, it certainly feels like there's, in terms of those like voices of self-pressure in one's head, there's something is like a little calmer inside, right? Having sort of got that out into the world. And again, I'm very grateful for Alan Kolsky-Horowitz and the Botsotso team. It really, for me, it kind of feels like it feels like something I'm perhaps more proud of, as proud or perhaps more proud of than any like professional like achievement, I guess, if you want to put it like that, right? Or in any other like job. It's yeah, it feels like something was kind of completed that I just needed to do, right? So I think that was yeah, just deeply like fulfilling, right? Is a word you've mentioned already. And it does, yeah, it does feel absolutely wonderful to have it. It's like it's a physical thing that you can kind of hold and it's in your hand, and that smell of the pages, right? The smell that you have of the pages. So no, yeah, it's fulfilling, I think, on uh, a lot of levels.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much for the answer and the beautiful
Cool.
poetry.
No, thank you for being here.